Now let me show you what it was like for this dog inside the storage unit. No air conditioning, no ventilation, no light, and it was 87 degrees on that day, and you can only imagine how hot it was inside. And now for Lucas Oil with the upcoming Super Bowl. Train tracks no more than 100 yards away. What kind of plan does the city have in place for a possible derailment? Substations like this one here have been supporting record electrical numbers, but the owner of this station is not worried about major issues yet. This is what's left of Virginia's house, just rubble. But she wasn't here during the tornado. She was next door in her granddaughter's house, riding out the storm in the basement. The Indianapolis 500 is a race with tons of history behind it, but events like this, a welcoming party for celebrities, brings a lot of notoriety to other parts of the country that aren't so familiar with the history of this race. Firehouse number 3 sits vacant, with its flags at half-staff. Inside, gear hangs lifeless on the racks, with one uniform missing, the one worn by fireman Scott Davis, a name that will be etched in stone across the street on a memorial honoring fallen firefighters. Davis and Kevin Gibson used to watch movies here in their spare time at the station, and it was Gibson inside the burning Tabernacle Church of Praise with Scott Davis when the roof collapsed.
And when I came out the window to turn around, I was expecting for him to be right behind me coming out the window. And when nobody else was coming out the window, it was just such a helpless feeling, because I knew I wasn't going to be able to get back through that window to back inside.
Gibson spoke of his friend, saying Davis was a great farmer, a great father, an even better man.
And he was just a stand-up guy. I mean, all around, a stand-up guy. So.
He will now try to be a father figure for Scott's 3 kids and help Scott's wife, Rayanne Davis, any way he can. She showed emotional strength today by speaking to reporters, but struggles to cope with the loss of her husband.
This is not something that I ever thought that I would be doing. Scott and I were supposed to grow gray together. But if there's anywhere else that he was going to pass, no better than the house of the Lord.
Rayanne Davis and Gibson agree. No one will ever fill Scott's shoes, because he had a presence that will continue to linger at home and in the department. A presence that will carry everyone forward.
You know, Scott would want us to get back on that truck and, you know, do what we do every day, and you know, in honor of him.
Adam Fox reporting, 24-hour News 8. It's all about cornhole at the Brickyard tailgate. Neighboring trailers come from Florida, Missouri, and Wisconsin. But for Rick Heinen's 8th Brickyard, the RVs aren't coming like they used to.
Well, look at the parking lot. This used to be packed, and it's not anywhere close to that anymore.
Georgetown Street sits idle with few customers.
Yeah, I remember walking down Georgetown the first few years you were here, and you couldn't hardly walk 5 feet without running into somebody, and now you walk down, and if you can walk 20 feet without any problems, there's nobody here.
More room to pack coolers and play cornhole. Fun for tailgaters, but not for vendors.
Right now, everybody's in survival mode.
That's Daryl Sanders. He's been traveling the NASCAR circuit selling hats, t-shirt, and die-cast NASCARs for more than 2 decades. He'll tell you why buyers are down.
Our fans are aging a little bit, and we need to replenish them with younger people.
A new NASCAR race in Kentucky doesn't help either. The Speedway might not agree, but they are doing something about it. Next year, 3 series will race at the Brickyard on race weekend, a move designed to get vendors and fans to stick around.
That's why we're all hanging on to these lots and stuff. It hadn't been profitable last year or this year, but we're looking for when we go back to having the truck and the bush race here, we're going to have some people in town here.
Honestly, I don't think it would ever be worth not coming back just because of the people here, the people we hang out with during the week. You know, we just have a good time.
Here in the crossroads of America, trains are a reliable commercial tool. But in the last 5 days, 2 trains have derailed, luckily both going off track in rural areas. And for Indiana Railroad, the Monroe County accident is their first derailment since 2005. That train dumping over 3,000 tons of coal.
Very small percentage of the coal may not be recovered. Actually, most of it will be cleaned up. Obviously, it's an environmental issue, and we want to have that cleaned up.
Other trains, like the one that derailed in Shelby County, carry chemicals. chemicals that could eventually end up in downtown Indy.
You do have hazardous materials that goes through downtown on a daily basis. You might have liquid propane going through LPG gas. You may have chlorine, large containers of chlorine. Hydrogen peroxide is another one that's a fairly common transport.
And now for Lucas Oil with the upcoming Super Bowl. Train tracks no more than 100 yards away. What kind of plan does the city have in place for a possible derailment? That's where this comes into play. The Emergency Evacuation Response Plan. It tells city departments where to be and what to do if disaster, like a hazardous derailment, strikes. For the Super Bowl, though, officials say the city should reroute the trains.
Logically, it would be to mitigate the number of trains going by Lucas Oil Stadium specifically during the Super Bowl event.
An Indianapolis man was convicted of murder and attempted murder after driving into a group of people outside a central Indiana bar. Authorities say Stephen Rush of Indianapolis drove his car into the group following a fist fight outside Anderson's Oasis bar. He was sentenced to 149 years in prison. Now, over the past 4 years, the relationship between the city council and the mayor has been anything but civil. But with a Democrat in the mayor's office, that might change. Now, the county clerk's office had election votes counted by 7:45 tonight, only an hour and 45 minutes after polls closed.
NewsLink's Tiara Thomas is at the county clerk's office with reaction to the vote. Tiara?
And before we have a few technical difficulties, and we'll elaborate a little bit more on the percentages of victory for the council district members.
Exactly.
Julius Anderson, 75% of the vote, just a landslide there in the 6th district on the east side of Muncie. And then the non-contested candidates were Douglas Marshall, replacing his father in the 1st district, and then in the 2nd district, Mark Conister, a Republican. And now we have Tiara live in the county clerk's office. Tiara.